All right, football fans, welcome to a Monday episode of the Call Sheet Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Kevin Smith, here at the Fans First Sports Network. Hope everybody had a great weekend, got a great week of shows lined up for you. And we're going to start today with an interesting conversation. I was flicking around the TV over the weekend, and I happened to land on, I don't know, it might have been ESPNU, and they were airing a 7-on-7 tournament. And it kind of clicked in my brain, and I thought to myself, I've been meaning to talk more about 7-on-7 as a growing institution in the world of football. And I reached out to Coach Marcus Hammond, who is the founder of a training platform, NLG, out of the Philadelphia area. He's also the offensive coordinator at Roman Catholic High School in Philly. And I wanted to talk about what he's built and how 7-on-7 is really becoming an impactful phenomenon in the sport of football. So, Marcus Hammond, welcome to the show, Coach.
Thank you, Coach. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that you came on. We're going to get into your endeavor here, NLG, and what you guys have been doing and the incredible impact it's really making. Before we do that, though, Coach, tell us about your football journey. How did you get to being the founder of NLG and then your current role at Roman Catholic?
So I'll try to be as brief as possible. So I graduated from Sterling High School in 2003. And then I was a walk-on at North Carolina A&T State University. When I was at Sterling, we ran a wing T. And back then, not even many high schools were doing a lot of spread stuff. So when I joined the roster at North Carolina A&T, I just literally didn't understand football. Didn't know about fronts, didn't know about coverages, didn't know about scheme, couldn't really drop properly. Literally everything that's expected of a college quarterback, I didn't know any of that. And the OC at the time, I went to him. His name was Kent Schoolfield, and our co-OC was Chennis Berry, who's now the head coach at South Carolina State. And I went to him and I said, hey, I don't really understand anything that you're talking about in the meetings. So he goes, well, if you're serious about learning football, meet me here at 6 a.m. the next day. So I went in at 6 a.m. and he would just, like Football 101, just teach me stuff. And we did that for a whole semester. And then I learned a lot, but I didn't really play much because I'm 5'10". And, 20 years ago, 5'10" quarterbacks didn't really play. You know what I mean? So fast forward, I graduated college. I finished in 2009, and I was working as a civil engineer. My love for football and passion for football never really went away, but I just accepted the fact that, walk on in college, I'm just going to be a fan from this point forward. My brother was coaching middle school football, and he goes, hey, I got some quarterbacks that I want you to work with. So I was working on a bridge job in Jersey City, New Jersey. And my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, Laura, she was living in Sicklerville. So every other weekend, one weekend I would drive to Sicklerville, another weekend she would drive up to Jersey City. So every weekend that I was home in South Jersey, I would work with the kids on my brother's team. And now this is like 2011 at the time. And the kids loved it. And we did that every other weekend for probably 6 or 7 months. So the kid that I was working with, he had never played football. He was a baseball player. He goes to the high school and ends up competing with a senior as a ninth grader. And everybody, very similar to the story that you just mentioned about Jackson. So everybody's like, how did you get so good? They told us you never played football until 8th grade. And he goes, I was working with Coach Marcus. So then the coach had hit me up, and he goes, hey, I want to bring some of my guys from the high school to come and work out with you. So the following time that I was down in South Jersey, a couple of kids from the high school came out, and we did that for another few months. So everything I'm talking about was in like a 2-year span. So one of the parents from the high school was like, yo, what college you coach at? This is awesome. And I'm like, I'm actually not even a coach. And he goes, what? I said, yeah, I'm not a coach. And he goes, listen, man, this is the stuff that you're teaching these guys. They don't really teach down here. Like the level of detail and the steps and the spacing and people don't really talk about that. And he goes, you need to start something. There's nothing for quarterbacks here. And I was like, I'm an engineer. I'm not really trying to be a coach. I'm building bridges, building highways. I don't really have time to be a coach. So the following time we were on the field, another parent pulled me aside and he said, hey, listen, man, my son had a great time at the training session. We've been sending him to camps in Florida and Georgia because there wasn't anything in the Jersey, Philly area. So I said, all right, let me do the research. And there wasn't anything. There was a guy up in Pennington, and there was guys up in North Jersey, and there were guys like outside of Philadelphia, and that's all I could find. Now we're in like the end of 2012 at this point. So I started a quarterback training program, was training kids for free, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's how it was born. So I had next level quarterbacks. Preston had Great Youth Sports, and we were trying to come up with a name. And we're like, man, we'll just call it Next Level Greats. So then we were operating as Next Level Greats. And I can't remember which player, but one of the players was like, man, that's too long. We're NLG. And we're like, what? He's like, yeah, NLG, man. And then literally from that point forward, it was just everybody just called it NLG.
Yeah. It's good. It sticks. You need something catchy for it to stick,
yep.
Right?
And that first year, that inaugural year, I don't know if any of these names will ring a bell with some people, but Sean Chandler was on that team. He ended up playing, I think, 7 years in the NFL. I think he's retired now. Irvin Charles was on that team. He's still in the NFL. He's on the Jets. Sterling Sheffield was on that team. He was two-time All-American FCS at Maine. He went to camp with the Cincinnati Bengals. Shane Lawless was on that team. He graduated from Morristown, 4-year starter at Stony Brook. And he had a training camp invite with the Chicago Bears. Tyreek Robinson from Morristown was there. He was All-State 3 years in a row. He didn't really get a chance in college due to his kind of off-the-field resume. Troy Shorts was on that team. He played at Penn State, very successful businessman now. It was Quentin Law was on that team. He ended up getting a full ride to Bryant University. He's now the mayor of Morristown. That team literally set the standard for us, and it was just by accident. Those were just the kids that wanted to come out on a regular basis here in South Jersey.
Right. So, Coach, let me ask you this. Obviously, you've built a program that stresses more than simply football development. The academic component is obviously very important. But in terms of the 7-on-7 component, what do you like about it? Why do you feel as though it has become so valuable in helping young kids develop?
Well, the 7-on-7 of today is not the 7-on-7 that I just described to you for a lot of different reasons. When done correctly, right? It's invaluable, specifically for us because, and when I say us, I'm referring to Jersey, because we don't get spring ball. Everybody down south gets spring ball. Florida, Georgia, Texas, they're in pads. But even the states that are not in pads, like even Pennsylvania, we're allowed to do workouts in shorts and shirts. So we're allowed to have a ball with the coach. And you couldn't do that in New Jersey. So if you had a freshman quarterback at Ocean City who was a really good player, how could you get him over a 7-month span from November to June? How could you develop him? You couldn't with a ball because it's illegal. So when done correctly, proper drops, proper timing, proper route concepts, eye discipline, and I'm speaking from a quarterback perspective, right? Understanding how to go through a progression, understanding what key reads are. And when you make it real, the development is invaluable. And when I say by making it real, the quarterback can't drop back and then hit 3, 4, 5, 6 times and throw the ball. That's not real. That's not proper timing. So what we always did was we would focus on that development. When we would work quick game concepts, we would go under center. Everybody had to go under center, even if your high school was primarily a shotgun high school. To this day, we still do that. So our guys at Roman, even though we are primarily a shotgun team, we always start the day under center. So now what you're not getting is you're not getting false steps. You're not getting sloppy footwork. You're getting 3 and plant and throw the ball. You're getting 3 if first progression is not there. You can reset to your next progression. Your eyes are in the right spot. When you can do that the right way, and even from a receiver position, right? The right routes, the right transition in and out of breaks, knowing where to put your eyes during a route, knowing how to fill space versus zone, knowing how to beat man coverage. And the same can be said for DB coaches. So at the beginning, we had Aaron Beasley working with our DBs, and Aaron Beasley played 10 years in the NFL. He's back in Jacksonville now, but like we had guys that all played Division I, and they were all teaching the right way. When done properly, there's literally no more valuable aspect of the development for the quarterback, wide receiver, or defensive back in NLG, and we do it even more now. So like, for example, I coach at Roman. I'm allowed to coach my kids in the offseason. So we have a team in NLG that's Roman Catholic kids. What we do is when we are working on install 1 in the offseason, we run install 1 at the 7-on-7 tournament. A few weeks later, we work on install 2, whether it's Zoom calls, practice, whatever, we do install 2 at the 7-on-7 tournament, and so on and so forth. And that's what a lot of other teams are doing, and that's why you're seeing them do so well in the season to compete with, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting because my son, he's only 12, but he plays AAU basketball. And we've been on this AAU circuit, and he's part of a pretty good program run by a guy named Torrey Cavalieri, who was a star at Atlantic City High School and is an excellent coach. And Torrey's doing everything the right way. He's developing these young kids. He's interested in skill development over just simply winning tournaments. But you run into a lot of what you're talking about. They're almost like mercenaries, man. You just put together a team for the weekend of the best kids you can find, and then you move on. I think where 7-on-7 gets a bad name is from a lot of people who don't understand some of the things that you just laid out, that see it as either these salesmen who are trying to take your money and just win tournaments, or B, as this entity that develops bad habits. You let the QB hold the ball for 7 seconds. The linebackers line up 8 yards deep and, take 20-yard drops into their depth, et cetera. But it sounds as though from what you're talking about that there's this very other world that's doing an excellent job of developing players.
Absolutely. And you can see, and every state is different, but by making it team-based and playing other team-based programs, now you're getting competition and development. You're not worried about, like, one of the things that people would say about NLG was when we had kids we had 50 different high schools at one point. Some kids would transfer. Why? They liked the way that the guy coached, or they liked the way that the quarterback threw, and they wanted to catch passes from the quarterback. So they would transfer, and then we would get blamed for it when, in the reality, parents will do what they want with their kids. But they always, especially in football and basketball, they always gravitate to the programs that are winning and the programs that are getting kids to college. And I don't really know if you can fight that or not, but I think having team-based 7-on-7 is a really good way to do that. So, like, for example, Jackson plays at Ocean City. Jackson's going to have a great year this year. I think everybody knows that because he's a great kid, right? What we tried to get Jackson to do was say, get 10 or 12 of your teammates. And instead of you coming to NLG and you're going all over the place, now you're going to run your playbook that you're going to run in the fall with your receivers, and you can travel wherever you want. You don't have to go to Florida, right? Because kids are playing lacrosse and they're doing different things. But now what happens is the ultimate development, and you're still getting the best of both worlds. You're able to play 7-on-7. You're able to compete against a much higher level of talent pool in some of these other states, and you're able to do it with your receivers, with your terminology, with your playbook. There's no other way to develop unless you live in Florida or Georgia and you can just do whatever you want as a coach,
Yeah. For those who are listening who aren't sure who Jackson is, Coach Hammond is talking about Jackson Becker, who will be the starting quarterback at Ocean City this coming fall. He's currently just a freshman. He ended up starting the last couple games for us last year as a freshman, and he's been training in the NLG program for a long time. And I'll be honest, Coach, when he first brought it up to me, I was skeptical. He brought up exactly what you just talked about, the idea of getting a group together and going up there and working out together. And we couldn't make it work because so many of our kids play a spring sport, et cetera. But I looked into your program, and the more that I read about it, the more I thought to myself, no, I like what they're doing here. I like the academic component. This is more than just about trying to, win so-called national championships and put money in people's pockets. This is really about developing young football players. And you've certainly done an excellent job with Jackson.
For sure. Well, the one thing I'll say is I'm like a second grade teacher. Excuse me, I apologize. I'm like a second grade teacher, or maybe call it a fifth grade teacher, right? My job is to get you to the point where you can do the work on your own. Once you can do the work on your own, it's up to you whether you pass the test or not. It's up to you whether you do well in sixth grade or not. So once we lay the foundation on how to read, how to count, how to spell, it's up to you to keep reading, to keep counting, to keep spelling. And the kids that we have that are ultimately really successful in our program, they do that. We had a couple players drafted this last weekend, and we were with a few of them, and they said the most fun that they had was during NLG practices when it was more competitive than the tournaments, and it was more competitive than their high school team because they were playing against each other week in and week out. And it wasn't contentious. They all knew each other, especially when they were in the program for 3-4 years. But they knew that they were going to run into each other in the playoffs. The one year we had a bunch of kids from Winslow, a bunch of kids from Millville. I think it was before the state championship. Millville and Winslow ended up playing each other in the bowl game, right? They both won their section. They ended up playing each other. We've had that happen probably 20 times in the last 10 years, where one team has a bunch of kids from it that did NLG playing another group of kids that had a bunch of kids that did NLG in the off season. Think about that, right? They're both winning championships. Both high school teams are winning championships. Both high school teams have kids getting recruited to college. So now when you put them on the same field in practice, you're not going against your scout team. You're going against a DB from another championship level team, and it's rep after rep after rep. You're going to get coached up on your steps, on your hips, on your hand placement, and do it over and over and over again.
Well, I think that there's obviously tremendous value in competition, the old iron sharpens iron mentality. And if you can create that, obviously kids are going to get better. Coach, man, this was a really interesting conversation. I learned a lot about the process and about what you guys are doing. And I wish you, man, the best of luck continuing forward with that. And then obviously at Roman Catholic as well, you guys play a gauntlet of a schedule. So best of luck with that as well.
Well, I got one thing to add real quick. So
yes, sir.
The thing about the high school-based 7-on-7, and Chad was telling me about this, and other coaches were telling me about this. What do you guys lift? Monday, Wednesday, Friday?
Generally, yes.
So if you have your lift Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you have team run or conditioning Tuesday, Thursday, and then you have your 7-on-7 on Saturday and Sunday, what was happening when it wasn't team-based was kids would not go to the weight room. And we didn't know because we're not their coach. And then they would go to 7-on-7 in Virginia or North Carolina. And now their coaches are looking at me like, why the heck is this kid in Virginia or North Carolina when he hasn't done anything all week? Well, when it's high school-based, you can look and say, all right, you skipped weight room on Monday, you didn't go to team run on Thursday, and now you're trying to sign up for 7-on-7 on Saturday. It doesn't work like that. 7-on-7 is complementary to what you do. It doesn't replace it. So now you can enhance the discipline of your program of everything else with 7-on-7. And I feel like that part you're never able to get with the all-star format. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because now the kids know, right? So Roman Catholic as a high school 7-on-7 team, our quarterback was hurt this year, so it was kind of unique. But last year, 2024, we went to Houston, Texas. That was a whole different world because a lot of those teams were high school based. We went to Tampa, Florida. We went to Myrtle Beach. We went to Charlotte. If you didn't do what you were supposed to do in the weight room, you weren't allowed to go on those trips. So now kids are busting their butts a little bit more in the weight room because they want to go to Houston, because they want to go to Florida. And it helps breed that competition level a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no, I appreciate you having me. And, this was good.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. And again, man, best of luck there at Roman Catholic and continued success with NLG. You've founded, I think, a thing that's been really productive and positive for a lot of young men.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good luck this year, Coach.
Thank you, Coach. All right. So for Marcus Hammond, this is Kevin Smith. Join me again tomorrow, right, for a Tuesday episode of the Call Sheet Daily. Until then, have a great day, everybody.